A little while ago, I tried to make a game in one day, and, well, here's how it went. So it's currently a Monday morning, and it's at the beginning of June, which means I've been working on my game Star Farmer for about the last 3 months or so. I'm kind of at a position now where I'm ready for a bit of a break, or at least just to look at something different for a short period of time to try and refresh some of my energy around the project. So what I'm thinking of doing is probably making a small roguelike thing again, just because they're sort of faster to make and faster to have a longer gameplay life out of. But I'm thinking of doing something a little bit different in terms of that core mechanic and maybe looking at making it a little bit of a puzzly sort of game. I'll have a play with that. I really have nothing planned. I need to plan that out now. But still retaining sort of that farming thing that I've established for the primary game, but maybe making it a little bit more on the relaxing tilt, because I know that I've gone quite far in the other direction with the other game, making it sort of quite high octane at times. So something that's really small, relaxing, maybe puzzly, stays in the Star Farm universe, and is roguelite as well. I'll basically try and follow everything that I do today. I'll try and film as much as possible to include in this video, but I'll go through everything. I'll kick it off, I'll do some planning this morning, then I want to try and jump into Engine as soon as possible so I can try and, make sure these things are fun quickly, make sure I can iterate quickly. So then I give myself some time later this afternoon to make sure I'm arting out the game, making sure it looks interesting enough, and then hopefully by this evening, I'll be able to sort of build out some content, maybe do some music for it, make it a little bit of a complete piece that will be pretty fun to look at by the end of the day. Alright, so I've just finished doing a little bit of planning, and what I've basically come up with is this idea of caring for a little garden, sort of sitting it in isolation in 3D space. And what you sort of do with that garden is get a queue of plant types that you can place, and basically, based on your decisions around where you place those things, you get different perks, benefits, or penalties depending on the location that you put them. So it's a little bit puzzly in that sense. What you're basically trying to do is you're trying to meet a score goal each round, which will then allow you to progress in that roguelike layer. I don't know how long the roguelite would last for. There's lots of bits that will be found out. Pretty much to contextualize what you're sort of doing in this game and what you're doing in the world around it is you're pretty much following the story of a spirit that is prevalent in the Star Farmer main game, which is a spirit called Tora. And what she's basically trying to do is she's trying to nurture this little farm on a dying world. Within that, what she needs to be doing is planting these magical plants that have these magical properties, which can generate some energy, which she can then use to send this message out to the universe to be like, hey, this planet's dying, I need your help. So you're basically going through this loop of being like, can I sort of maintain this garden to a point where I can get this message out to the world? Or am I going to fail and effectively end the run, which means that your message does not get out to the world? I did a bit of planning trying to work out the types of plants that would be in this game. It's tricky because I've only got the one day, so I can't really make them super mechanically complex. I've got quite a few planned out, but even this is going to be tough to sort of execute on. I'm not 100% sold on the design of them, but I think once we start to get them in, we can probably get a bit of an idea of what's working and what's not. But the ideas are basically things like, you place a little sprout thing and that'll give you like an extra energy for that round, but there'll be other things that can like buff up adjacent tiles. So it's like if I place a little sprout and then I put a star plant next to it, that'll increase the energy generation that sprout by 1. And then also having things like where you're forced to place -1, so you gotta be careful about where you place those things on the grid. So maybe like the bomb plant, for example, which could be useful. You could get rid of some bad plants, but what it actually does is you place it and it'll consume itself and destroy all adjacent plants. So you want to be careful about where you put that because it can really destabilize the board that you're building. But sort of things like that. But I mean, we'll jump in. We'll see what feels good. Take a bit of time to get the sort of systems in place to have this all working. But once we do get a feel for it, we probably should be able to adjust a few of those things and rethink some of the designs in these. So these are good base designs to start us off at least. But yeah, otherwise, I think we'll try and jump into Engine and get some of this stuff up and running. Okay, so it's now closing in on dinner time, so I'm going to take a break here to pause and get some dinner. I probably started a little bit later in the day than I would have liked to today. So I've gotten a little bit done, but maybe not as much as I was hoping to. I have got in engine now the basic tile system functioning, the camera system is in, which is great. So all the ingredients are there to make it look and feel like a game. And I have also started putting some plant types in. So you can plant some, you can basically play a game. It's not balanced, it's not the most interesting, but it does work. I have also got all the planting actions in, so there's 3 different plant types. You can plant those. They all have different effects. Some will grant basic points, some will eat up other plants, some will spread across the map a little bit more. So there is some sort of interest there, so it's starting to look a little bit interesting. After dinner, I probably will look to take a step back from dev side and just polish up this art front, get that palette organized that I spoke about, get that looking a little bit more cohesive, and hopefully bring a bit of identity to the game there. And then beyond that, I'll jump back into the game and just try and deepen it, try and polish up that core loop so it feels a little bit more complete, get those narrative elements in that I spoke about as well, and then probably settle on some music at the end of the day and visit where we're at. I'm hoping by the end of the day it's at least indicative of what the game could be, and I definitely want to have a core loop in so you can win and lose and sort of have a few different strategies that you can implement. It won't be balanced, and that's fine. That's sort of the reality of doing a thing in a day from start to finish, but hopefully it should show the direction it could go. Okay, so it's quite a bit later now. It's actually getting really quite late. It's currently, well, it's just ticked over midnight. But we did have I did have a late start to the day, and we did have a bit of a late dinner, I suppose. But we are in a position now that we have got a full loop of the game in, which is great. It is a playable thing. There probably isn't the content depth that I want just yet, but it does function. You can win and lose. There's a narrative layer at the start, which is good. So maybe if I have time at the end, I might see if I can chuck in a few more plants to give it a little bit more variety. But I did want to make sure I got the little music creation part in, because I think that would be a little bit of fun to try and polish up the whole experience. So I am going to sit down for a little bit now and put together a small track that I can just loop in the gameplay. And then after that, it will effectively be finished. But I want to see if I can squeeze in a little bit more on the content depth side, just to give a little bit more juice to it. But otherwise, I'm quite happy with where I've gotten to. The art's in. I managed to reuse a bunch of assets I was using from my other project, which was good. The palette is probably not fantastic, but it is consistent, so it works. But I'm quite happy with what's there, and I think it's quite an interesting little game. It feels, when I'm playing it, I'm weirdly reminded of Final Fantasy's Triple Triad, for anyone who's played that before. It has very much that same feeling of, because you sometimes are forced to play things in a certain order, it can sometimes not be until the last turn that you realize that you've screwed something up from much earlier in your run, which has a kind of, cool foresight to how you plan out your board. So I'm quite happy with that layer within it. Okay, so it is now 10 past 2 in the morning, but I am happy to call this experiment finished. So I got the music in, it more or less fits the tone, polish with standing. What I also was able to do was get a whole bunch more plants in, which has probably thrown off the balance even more, but it does make it a lot more interesting. So we've ended up with 10 plants at the end. So the basic plants, there's a few things like the flower, the grass, the hedge as well. They all sort of behave as just a simple resource drop. So they'll grow on a resource if you have them in play at the end of the season.
There are a couple of other interesting ones that I put in, like ones that subtract energy. So it gives more meaning to some of the plants that overtake adjacent plants or overtake random plants. So you might want to try and get rid of the ones that are negative for you. So a little bit more, a few more dynamics there at least. Also got a new one, like explosive plant doesn't actually do anything. It's literally just a bomb that explodes itself and everything around it. And some particularly tricky ones, like the stinky plant's brutal because it's -3. But then also things like the mean plant, which will be a negative, it will subtract energy, but it will also randomly consume a tile when it's planted. So it's not even just an adjacent tile, it's any tile on the map. So some ones that are a little bit trickier to handle and also a bit luck-based, which I don't know if in the full game that would be super ideal. I mean, a little bit of luck can be okay, but you know, not too sure. So here is what we've ended up with in the end. So I got a little bit of a high score system, which is nice, some sort of long-term progression you can chase. I'm not even actually sure if it's possible to finish the game as it stands right now. You can definitely get to the 3rd season. The win state is technically after the 4th season, but there's not really anything special that happens in it anyway. But maybe if you do get a lot of good RNG, it's possible. A bunch of 3-drops or something like that. The way that it works is basically you spawn into this map. You have a grid of 3x4 tiles. What basically happens then is that you get a selection of random plants that you can place on the map. You must place them in order, and you must place every plant that is presented to you. So first up, we've got the hungry plants. The hungry plant is going to give us a lot of energy, but it's also going to consume adjacent plants. Fortunately, there's nothing else on the board, so we can just drop that down and it's totally fine. Simple plant, that's a pretty basic one, just gives us 1 energy, and the same with the grass. And the hedge as well. So we can just put those down there, which is nice. Oh, this is a really good hand. So we had a really easy run then. Big amount of score. So next round, so now we get the stinky plant. That is a annoying one. We're going to want to try and get rid of that if we can, because it does subtract 3 energy. So hopefully if we get some luck with the mean plant, maybe that'll get rid of the stinky plant. It did not, I got rid of that. So we're in a bit of strife here. Yeah, we definitely can't win that. So this is some of the balancing stuff that's not really ironed out right now, is I don't think every level is winnable all the time. But yeah, that is the loop for this game made in a day. Pretty much all in, so I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, balancing obviously you still need some lava. We could probably put a bit of time into just buffing up some of what the energy these grant. It will probably be pretty good. It will probably offset some of those really tough ones to handle. Or maybe even lower the energy requirement. Each level could be a way to sort of soften that impact for now.
Alright, so that brings us to the end of this challenge. I'm pretty happy with where I got to in the end, actually. Being able to put in those extra plant types at the end really deepened the gameplay and replayability, I think. Even though it did throw off the balance like I mentioned, it did make it a lot more interesting to play on replay, which is great. Like you'd expect, doing this on such a short timeline has meant that a lot of the elements in there are lacking a lot of polish. They're not, perfected, but I think it has sort of hit the goal, which is proving that there's something interesting here with this loop. I'm pretty happy with what the loop is in the end. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm really sort of like the dynamics around the board management. I think, you feel the mistakes that you've made early on much later sometimes, but also you're rewarded for managing your board really well early. At the moment, there's no bad luck protection, so you can just get totally shafted by whatever plant options are in front of you. But, I think if you tighten that up, you'd be able to get that dynamic feeling really good. So I'm quite pleased with it. I wish I was able to put in more of a narrative layer. Did at least get that opening cutscene to sort of introduce the premise, which is good. Lets us explore a little bit of what I was thinking this game could tell the story of. I mean, even in this short time, like being able to play around with a few different plant types and really sort of see how they adjust the meta of the game has been a lot of fun. So I feel like any opportunity to sort of build on that is going to be pretty cool. So I'm pretty happy with where we got to. I will try and put up this game somewhere for free download, probably on itch or something like that, just so you can see what was able to get done in one day. Won't be super polished, there will be bugs, sometimes won't be winnable as I've mentioned, but it could still be fun to check out what was able to get done here today. But it is now 2:30 in the morning. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going this long to do a game in a day, but it is a lofty goal, and so I kind of had to sort of execute on what I wanted to. So, 2 quick announcements. For any keen-eyed viewers, you may have noticed that this video was actually filmed 4 or so months ago, and in that time a lot has happened. Firstly, the game I mentioned I was working on throughout this video, Star Farmer, has actually since launched. Star Farmer is kind of this odd blend that fuses bullet heaven gameplay, like Survivors-like gameplay, with a farming game, where you're basically playing as a powerful warlock who has this side hustle harvesting plants in space. And alongside that gameplay, there is a story for you to follow that sort of looks at the mysteries of this long dead planet, and you sort of come tied up in the fate of that planet and trying to save it, or at least find out what's happened to it. And for anyone watching this early on, from November 6 to 20, Star Farmer is involved in Steam's Bullet Heaven Fest. As for Little Garden, well, it hasn't died, but it does look very different to the version you saw in this video. It is now being developed as a small, cozy game where you venture into the wilds of a dying world to find furniture and collectibles, catch fish, and collect bugs to bring back to your sanctuary to decorate. It's kind of a prequel to the events of Star Farmer, where you're trying to stave off the death of a planet by creating a sanctuary and healing the environment around you. And I'm working with a writer on this project, so it should be a lot of fun, and hopefully it will be out early next year sometime on Steam.